I'm Abby from Always at Home, and today we're going to learn everything you need to know to be able to crochet for the very first time. To get started, you're going to need to grab some yarn. This is some simple double knit yarn, nothing too thick, nothing too thin. You're going to need a crochet hook. I'm using a 4mm and I always suggest you get one with a grip. It's a lot easier to handle, especially as a beginner. You'll also need a pair of scissors. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. These used to be some cuticle scissors, or you can use a pair of kitchen scissors if you don't have anything else. And finally, some yarn needles. So the first thing we're going to talk about is how to actually hold the yarn. Now, some people like to do a wrap around the pinky and over the finger. This is how my nan did it, who taught me. Personally, I find that to be quite uncomfortable. So I hold my yarn so it goes over my index finger, and then I just loosely hold it with my fingers over my palm like this. You don't want to grab it because that's going to make crocheting really hard. But you don't want it to be too loose so that it's sort of flopping everywhere. It's also going to make it quite hard to work with. So instead, like I said, just over the index finger and into the palm. But play around with this, do what feels comfortable for you. So let's start with a slip knot. So this is how most of your crochet patterns will begin. It's a knot that is adjustable depending on how tight you pull it. So to do this, I do it over the index finger, loop around like a little ring, and then you push the long tail through the gap, pull that through, and just pull on the short strand to tighten it, and then that is your slip knot. So I'll show you that again quickly. So over the index finger, loosen it, pull through the long strand, hold the long strand, pull on the short strand, and then you have this. So from here, get your crochet hook, and you want to just simply put it through the loop and then pull on the long strand to tighten it in. You don't want it to be super tight. That's going to make that quite hard to work with as well. You want it to be just tight enough so that there's a very small gap. I don't know if you guys can see that. Very small gap between the hook and the knot. So now that we have this, we can start to learn our first stitch, which is going to be a chain stitch. And this is how, again, most projects will start with some kind of chain stitch, some variant. Almost all beginner projects will start with a chain stitch. Like I said before, just hold your yarn how you feel comfortable. This is how I do it. You want to take your hook, put it over the top of the yarn and back up. So you're wrapping the yarn over the top of the hook with the hook pointing towards you. And then you want to use the hook to grab at the yarn. And this is where I would say hold the tail with your non-working hand, the one holding the yarn. So over, grab the tail just to help. Again, don't try and pull it any tighter, just hold it in place. And then you want to pull that yarn through the slip stitch. Now that is your first chain stitch. So let's do that again. Pull the yarn over, and you can do this as well. You can use your fingers to manipulate the yarn. It'll make it a lot easier, and when you get used to it, it makes it a bit quicker as well. So yarn over the top of the hook and pull through the first loop. So we're going to do that again a few more times. We're going to do it 10 times. So yarn over, yarn over and pull through, and again yarn over and pull through, and just keep doing that until you have 10 V's. So you can see these V's here. You want 10 of those. 7, and this is, it's worth me mentioning about tension. This is where tension is really important. So you don't want to be pulling this really tight. It's going to make it harder for you to work with, and also it is going to make these look all weird shapes and sizes. So you don't want to be pulling it too tight, because then it'll look like this and you'll be struggling to get your hook through, and they'll be really difficult to work with later on as well. You won't be able to get the hook in. So you don't want to be doing that, but you also don't want it to be too loose, because if you do it too loosely, they end up with these huge gaps and the sizes vary, and it'll also be falling off your hook. it makes it difficult to work with. You'll know when you get the tension right because it'll feel like it's flowing quite nicely. So now that we have our 10 chain stitches here, we can start working in them. Our next stitch is going to be a single crochet. Now, a single crochet is called so because the yarn only goes over once. It's quite similar to a chain stitch. So generally speaking as well, when you are going in rows, you will always do some kind of chain stitch to turn a corner, just to make sure the edge is nice and sharp. So even though we've chained 10 already, we're going to chain an extra one so that we can turn. And now instead of going into this first stitch, we're going to go into the second stitch from the hook. So not the first V, the next one over. So we're going to hold this in place. We're going to insert our hook into that second stitch. You'll notice that there's the V and then there's also an extra stitch. I go underneath that extra stitch so that they now sit on top of my hook. Once you're through, pull the yarn like you did with the chain stitch over the top of the hook and through that loop. Now instead of pulling straight through like we did for a chain stitch, we are going to yarn over and pull through both loops, and that's your single crochet. If you did pull straight through, that is a stitch, that's a slip stitch. We'll be talking a little bit more about that later. Essentially it's just flat, so it's great for working around the edges of things to make things nice and neat. But for the single crochet, it is hook in into the next one, yarn over, pull through, and then yarn over again, pull through the 2 loops. So let's do that for the remainder of this row. Hook in, yarn over, pull through 2. Hook in, yarn over, pull through 2. And we're going to do that for the next remainder of stitches. So that's in through the hole, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through 2. And this last one where the slip stitch was can be a bit funny, so use your nail if you need to find the gap to go in. I must have done this one a bit tight. So that's why it's important to leave a nice gap when you do the slip stitch. Not the slip stitch, sorry, the slip knot. So yarn in, wiggle it in if you need to, and pull through, and pull through 2. So there we go, that's a row of single crochet. Now I would say do a few more rows of these just to get used to the tension of it all. The bigger the work gets, the easier it is to work with. So before we start on the next row, chain 1, so that's the yarn over and just pull through the loop, and then turn your work and then start working again. Now that we have this base, instead of trying to wiggle our way through the V's, all you have to do is find the little like O shape here and go into the middle of that. So yarn through, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through 2. So do that for 5 rows and then come back and we'll get to work on the next stitch. There we go. So that is what 5 rows of your single crochet will look like. If you notice that it's all wibbly and some are a bit bigger, that's a tension problem. So the more you practice, the more you get used to holding the yarn and how tense you have it, the better that will become. So that's something that will develop over time. But that is how your single crochets will look. When you're counting your rows, because this is something I struggled with at the beginning, when you're counting your rows, you can either count the holes, the gaps, so you can go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or you can count the, I'm calling them ladders for the sake of this, the little V shapes here, one, a V like this, where you can see we've gone into the previous loop. So you can go, there's 1, there's 2, there's 3, there's 4, and there's 5. So it's up to you which you prefer. For me it depends on the stitch. Sometimes it's easier to see the lines, sometimes it's easier to see the holes. So there are your 5 single crochets. Now you're going to learn the next stitch, which depending on where you're from is either called the double crochet or the half double crochet. In America it's a half double and in the UK it is a double. So make sure you check where your pattern is from and then you can determine that way. So to do this one, you can either chain 1 or chain 2. I prefer to chain 1, I think it's the right height. So I chain 1, turn your work. Now for this one, instead of going in and grabbing the yarn, we are going to yarn over first, then go into the loop, grab your yarn. So now you've got 3 loops on your hook, yarn over and pull through all 3 of those loops. So yarn over, into the stitch, pull yarn through, yarn over and pull through 3 loops. Over, in, through, over, through. So now continue that across the row. The reason I like to chain 1, even though this is a bigger stitch, is I find 2 is a little bit loose on that edge. You can do 2 if you happen to have a looser tension, but I prefer with my personal tension to just do 1. So yarn over, into the stitch, over, through, through 3, and into the last stitch. So there's your first row of half double crochets. This is my personal favourite stitch. I think that they look lovely. They're nice and tight, but they are a bit bigger, easier to work with. So now, again, chain 1, turn work, and repeat for another 4 rows. So you have 5 rows in total. Okay, so now we have our 5 single crochets and our 5 half double or double crochets. So now we're going to move on to our next stitch, which is, again, depending on where you're from. In the US it's a double crochet, and in the UK it's a treble crochet. So for this one, instead of chaining 1, we're going to chain 2 because it's a bit taller. 2. So it's just to make that edge like this, nice and crisp. Turn your work. Now yarn over like with the half double / double crochet, and then insert into that first stitch, pull through, but this time we're going to yarn over. Instead of pulling through all 3, we're going to pull through the first 2 loops, leaving us with 2 more, and then the next 2 loops. So yarn over into the next stitch, pull through, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. So repeat that along the rows. Yarn over into the stitch, pull through 2 and pull through 2 all the way along. There we go. So there's your first row of double crochets. You'll notice the gap on this one is significantly bigger. This one's good if you're working with something that you want to be nice and stretchy, or maybe something mesh. So now we're going to do the same thing and repeat that for another 4 rows, making for a total of 5. So again, chain 2 and turn your work, and then go across. So now we have our 5 single crochets, our 5 half double / doubles, and our 5 double / triples. So now I'm going to show you all how we do a slip stitch, which is great if you want to border a piece of work. So for our slip stitch, we're actually just going to border the top like this. So this time we don't need to chain anything, just turn the work, and we're going to go into our first stitch and pull through a loop. For a slip stitch, you want to keep this nice and loose. You don't want it to be flopping around, you don't want to let go completely of the yarn, but you don't want to be pulling it tight either like you would for the other stitches. You want instead to sort of just let it have free will, pull through, because this stitch is less of a building stitch and is more either for decoration or is good for ribbing. So just hold it nicely. I find with this stitch it's easier to hold my hook straight up like this. I find I have more control. So yarn over, pull through, and just keep that up all the way along. Now you can stop here if you want to. I would suggest that you actually go around and border the whole thing, and then to finish it off just go back into the stitch where you started and pull the loop along. So there you go, now it's bordered nicely, and if it was more even it would look a bit neater, but it adds a nice edge to any piece that you're doing. So to finish this off now, all we need to do is take your scissors and cut a tail. Leave it fairly long, just about 2 to 3 inches unless a pattern says otherwise. And then what we're going to do, put your hook back through the loop and do a chain stitch, but instead of leaving it there, pull the tail all the way through and tighten it. And then we take our yarn needles and thread it. If you want to, you can put a little bit of spit on there. I'm not going to, for the sake of saving you guys that vision. And then all you have to do is just essentially thread the end through the stitches so that you can't see it. So like so, just pull the needle through so that, oh, you can see it a little bit at the back, but that's okay. And then pull the tail through nicely. And then you don't have to weave the whole thing, it's just to stop it from coming undone. And then just cut off that excess and repeat for the bottom where we started. Obviously for this one it's already a tail, you don't need to do any extra stitches, that's already secure. It's just to neaten it all up. Like so. And there you have it. So just to recap, we've now learned how to hold the yarn about tension, to slip knot, to chain stitch, single crochet, half double crochet or double crochet, a double or treble crochet, and a slip stitch, and how to finish off. So now that you know all of the basic skills you need, feel free to check out my playlist on beginner tutorials and find something that you want to try. I know straight away after doing this, we are going to learn how to make a pouch to keep our crochet hooks in using a variety of these stitches, so it'll look nice and cool. So if you want to watch that, click the video on the screen. Otherwise, you can check out the playlist and have a scroll through to see what suits you. And I will see you all in the next one. Happy crafting!